apologies from Spencer Flower and Graham Carr-Jones. Spencer Flower, the leader, has COVID, so I'm sure you join me in wishing him a speedy recovery. Graham Carr-Jones is celebrating a significant birthday, so we have let him off. I don't believe there are any other apologies. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest that any Cabinet member wishes to make? No, thank you. Do you approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of March? Agreed. Thank you very much. We now move to public participation. We have a question from Councillor Kate Mason, who I've introduced myself to. Councillor Kate Mason, you're welcome to stand or sit down. When I switch my microphone off, it would help if you switched yours on, if you wouldn't mind. It's the little button with the person there. You can stand up or sit down, whichever you feel most comfortable with. Make your statement, and then if you can switch your microphone off, and David Walsh will give you an answer to your question. Councillor Kate Mason, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, I'm Councillor Kate Mason. I'm a member of Alderholt Parish Council, and I'm chairman of the Alderholt Parish Council Neighbourhood Plan Committee. Alderholt, in case any of you are unaware, is on the very far eastern side of the county, bordering on Hampshire. Our question is this. Alderholt Parish Council would like to know the date in April 2022 when the Dorset Local Plan pre-submission stage will be published, or, if not in April, then the date at which this will take place.
Thank you very much indeed. I call upon David Walsh to respond to that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason, for the opportunity this gives me to update people on where we are. The pre-submission publication of the Dorset Local Plan will no longer be taking place this spring due to the length of time required to finalise some of the evidence-based work. We will be updating the local development scheme in due course, but the earliest that publication could now take place would be the autumn. And I congratulate you for all the work you're doing with the Alderholt Neighbourhood Plan. So well done. Keep going.
Thank you very much. And as we agreed earlier, you are welcome to stay if you are of that sort of ilk, or quietly go whenever you feel like doing so. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your question. We now have two questions from Councillor John Orrell. Councillor Orrell, can I take your first question, please? Councillor Orrell, can you stick your microphone on and stick the microphone near you?
Okay, two questions. The first one was on the conservation zone. We had a conservation zone in Weymouth years ago. It was successful. We managed to renovate the town centre. We've done another inspection recently, and the buildings are starting to deteriorate. So the question is, can we have a conservation officer assigned to replicate the excellent work of years ago? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I call upon the portfolio holder? John, have you turned your microphone off? Thank you. Right, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Councillor Orrell. The conservation enforcement work undertaken in Weymouth was funded by a specific budget and ended in October 2020. The specific role was time limited and funded prior to Dorset Council being formed. Since then, the service has been restructured around the geography of the new council area. The team covers a complex array of work across the whole of the Dorset Council, and the demands on the team mean that it is not feasible to have a dedicated officer covering Weymouth Town Centre alone. However, one of the conservation officers covers the area in and around Weymouth and Portland, and part of the role includes assessing the expediency of enforcement action affecting heritage assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to ask supplementary?
Yes, I acknowledge that we do have a conservation officer assigned to the town, but my understanding is that their time is pretty much taken up responding to planning inquiries and putting in conservation reports. So we do need a little bit extra resource to be able to take action on the deteriorating shop buildings. So if we can have that in mind, that we do, what we have at the moment is not sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orrell. Councillor Walsh, would you like to come back on that?
Thank you for making that point clear, and yes, we will put that forward. I can assure you of that. So, thank you.
Councillor Orrell, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Health as well. The causes and cures lie beyond pure policing and link public health, housing, education and employment. The former Malcolm board brought together senior staff at a strategic level to coordinate action. This was lost after the formation of Dorset Council. The need to work together remains strong, and local police with the Business Improvement District, We Are Weymouth, plus the Town Council are looking to rebuild this strategic approach. Can the Council commit housing and public health input to this, the most hard-pressed part of Dorset that needs levelling up?
Thank you very much, Councillor Orrell. As a little bit of precursor before I give you a formal answer, this required coordination between a number of areas within Dorset Council. So whilst I am answering in my role as portfolio holder for adult social care and health, this has been round a number of people in the organisation because it does involve a number of areas within the council. So I'm going to give you the answer, but it is quite a sort of complex answer, as your question deserves. Firstly, it is important to emphasise that Dorset Council is strongly committed to achieving the best possible outcomes for Weymouth and its residents. This includes the promotion of what works well in Weymouth, as well as addressing and levelling up where there is deprivation, crime, poor health, poor educational achievement or poor housing. Strategic leadership has been broadened and developed since the closure of the Malcolm Regis Board, and the focus on all areas of Weymouth is the right way forward, moving on from the emphasis on one ward. As one example of many, the Joint Health and Wellbeing Board strategy has a priority focus on improving outcomes in disadvantaged and deprived communities and targets much of its attention on Weymouth and Portland. Live Well Dorset, for example, has higher uptake of its health improvement services in the most deprived areas, including Weymouth and Portland, and we work to remove barriers to people accessing support to improve their health. As a partnership across public health, housing, social care and voluntary sectors, we have brought in significant new investment in drug and alcohol services in the last year, bringing benefits to people's health and well-being and also reducing crime, antisocial behaviour and street homelessness. A further example is our community response pilot. This is a partnership between Social Care and Age UK, supporting people to access resources in the Weymouth and Portland area, enabling them to remain at home. Operational delivery is important, and we work hard to make sure that this strategic leadership focuses on what matters to local residents and through effective local services. We commit to continue to be a vital part of the partnership approach described in the question, linking in with the Town Council, Business Improvement District and a range of agencies such as Dorset Police. This includes housing and public health, but is across all our areas of influence, with a great deal of input from our People in Place directorates and portfolios into strategies such as our Stronger Neighbourhoods approach. As part of our collaborative approach, initiative and ideas that are coming forward from agencies mentioned in the question are always embraced, and we continue to work together to develop the best way forward for Weymouth. Councillor Orrell, I hope that gives you an indication that we have taken your question very seriously. I'm happy to hear any supplementary. I very much doubt I'll be able to give you an immediate answer.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do a supplementary. I do recognise the input that the council is putting in with social services and particularly trying to with drug and rehab, which is addressing some of the cuts that were made in 2017, which is almost welcome. Since I put my question in, I've become aware of the one I'd expressed was a bottom-up Town Council Business Improvement Police initiative to work together. I'd then become aware of a top-down approach from NHS, again, looking at deprived areas from the health rather than the police angle, which I shared by email yesterday. So I suppose the plea is that I don't expect an answer today, but I hope in the coming months there'll be an opportunity to pull together that top-down health input with the bottom-up police input to be able to work together. I think, and not just for my ward, but for the other deprived wards in Weymouth, which include Westham and Rodwell and Underhill. Thank you.
Yes, the Chief Executive and I are completely agreed that that is something we should aim to achieve and that we will keep you informed. There are no further questions. I will move on to the next item, which is the forward plan. I know that Councillor Parry has a comment on the forward plan. Councillor Parry?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just in consultation with the Executive Director that we wish to move the report on school travel back 1 month, please.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from Cabinet members on the forward plan? No? In that case, with that change, the forward plan will be as is. Item 7 is the Council Plan Performance, January to March 2022. Councillor Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to just present a progress report today on the Council's plan and this is to make sure that we measure and monitor against our 6 priorities, which are economic growth, our unique environment, the climate and ecological emergency, suitable housing, strong and healthy communities, and staying safe and well. I'm not going to go into the detailed performance measures today. Those are all available on our website through people and health scrutiny and place and resource scrutiny. Rather, in the report today is an overview at a high level. And I just want to bring out some of the, what I think, good news stories as we go through this. So in the area of economic growth, we have had a £500,000 grant to spearhead a new pilot project looking at ways of boosting mobile digital coverage in the county. It's one of 8 pilots to receive a share of the government's £4 million digital connectivity infrastructure accelerator. That's quite difficult to say, isn't it? And we will build on the platform and already developed by our award-winning 5G Rural Dorset team. So I think that's a really good news. Coming further down through the report, under unique environment and climate and ecological emergency, work to improve energy and efficiency and install low-carbon technologies started in over 60 council-owned sites using £19 million worth of grant funding. So far, 40 heating management system updates have been completed, 15 lighting upgrades final, and 6 solar panel projects finalised. In total, more than 100 public buildings will benefit from the scheme, including leisure centres and local schools and academies. Under suitable housing, it remains a significant challenge for Dorset. Targets for housing delivery in adopted plans were not met last year, in part due to national lockdowns, which effectively closed down the construction industry. This is a factor that has been recognised by government, and our local housing associations are excellent developers of new and existing housing, helping us to exceed our new build targets. Last year, 301, and already having exceeded the target for this financial year. The number of homeless approaches has increased significantly at the start of the year. However, since this report was written, those numbers have been reduced, and we do seem to be managing that in a better way. And still, though, there are too many people in bed and breakfast, and we are working hard to look at alternative accommodation for them, potentially using some of the council's own buildings. Council has also made significant improvements in processing local land charge searches, which are required when people buy a property. In February, the average time to return a search was 26 working days. This has come down from 62 in last October, despite the fact we're still getting this virtually the same number of requests for searches. So it's excellent work by the staff. We hope to get this down to 10 days or under. There's still a little way to go to that, but we're working hard to get to that stage. It's coming through. Strong and healthy communities. The council secured over 2 million from the government's Household Support Fund, which has been used to help vulnerable households across the county using one-off winter energy vouchers of £200, allocated to 3,500 households, and a range of other support. In addition, £650,000 was given to the council to help support victims of domestic abuse in this quarter, and the money is due to the government's introduction of the Domestic Abuse Act, which became law last year. I'm going through now through to Safe and Well. What we've been able to do is 68 local social, voluntary and community organisations received council funding. Consultation was launched asking families, carers in education setting and communities for their thoughts about the right foundations for Dorset's children, and we will be having more of that later in the Cabinet reports. And although the Council's budget, which was agreed in February, continues to prioritise resource allocation to frontline services wherever possible, it continues against a national background of extreme pressures and resulting in pressures on our budget. I'm happy to propose the report, Chairman, and ask if there's anybody who wishes to comment on it. I think we're making excellent progress against our priorities. I have to say that when we have papers like this come to Cabinet, sometimes the information is a little behind because of the length of time it takes to process the paper, but nonetheless, I'm very pleased with the progress that we are making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haynes. I will take questions from the floor, and I can see Councillor Heatley. Can I just make a point about questions from the floor before we start? A, they have to be questions, and B, they have to be related to the subject matter on the agenda. We are in a pre-election period. I shall be extremely firm if anybody goes off message. Councillor Heatley, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Brian Heatley from Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth. I remember being at a real cabinet before the COVID epidemic, and I raised the issue of reporting on the performance on the climate and emergency work. And there was some blank spaces in the plan at that point. Now, we've made huge progress since then in terms of embedding that climate work into the council's main structures. It's a priority in the corporate plan. We've got a budget line. We've appointed a senior member of staff. But if you look at this performance dashboard, you will not find performance measures for the climate and ecological emergency. There are a couple that are kind of inherited from previous bits of work, like progress on recycling, residual waste, and quaintly, the areas of new space created for recreation, ecology, climate resilience, and carbon sequestration, which is not perhaps what I'd regard as the first thing I'd think of. In particular, Councillor Bryan proudly announced at the end of 2021 that in our own activities as a council, we'd reduced our emissions by 17%. That seems to me to be an excellent summary measure of progress, but please, can we have things like that in the system? So my question is, when are we going to get a list of climate and ecological measures in the system?
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. Can I congratulate you on making a very pertinent, clear question related to the agenda item. I will give it over to Councillor Haynes to give as much of an answer as she is capable of giving. Councillor Haynes.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Heatley, because actually at our last performance meeting in March, one of the things I tasked Cabinet members with was actually going through the key performance indicators, because some of them just aren't right and some of them don't exist. So what we really need to do is to get rid of some of them, because there seem to be rather too many of them, make them more pertinent about outcomes for the council and for the public. And we are in the process of doing that. I've tasked them to come back with the start of the 10s at the April meeting, and then we'll be moving those through through an overview or a scrutiny committee as we're looking to see how we work them out. Okay, so we are on the task.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. That gives you an answer, and you will see progress as it develops. Are there any other members, non-executive members, who wish to raise questions? Any Cabinet members who wish to raise questions? If I may say, there's no formal decision required, so members are asked to note and comment on progress. And can I say a thank you and congratulations to Councillor Haynes. The performance indicator measures are moving forward. We certainly aren't there yet, as Councillor Heatley has quite eloquently noted, but we are moving towards it, and I thank you very much. I think it's something we can be quite proud of. So can I take members to be happy with that? Thank you very much. I'll now move on to the next item, which is the Lyme Regis Environmental Improvement Scheme, Phase 5 Outline Business Case. Councillor Bryan.
With your permission, Chairman, I'm going to remain seated if you don't mind.
Please do.
Members, this is all about protecting our coastal towns and villages from ever-increasing sea levels. It's a very important part of creating the right environment for our local coastal towns, and it's so important that we address this with great speed. The paper presents the online business case for the scheme, which requires Cabinet and Environmental Agency approval to claim flood defence grant in aid funding. There's a mouthful. The paper seeks agreement for the business case and authorisation to approach the Environmental Agency Approvals Board. 2 other recommendations are also listed. Phase 5 of the above scheme relates to the Cobb. Other phases of the scheme have previously provided coastal protection along the rest of the Lyme Regis Town coastline area. The main schemes are: meet the objectives as identified in the LREI Strategy Plan 2002, address current maintenance issues and prepare a plan for future maintenance, facilitate improvement of utilities serving the businesses located on the Cobb, and upgrade the general Cobb environment, including surfaces, lighting and signage compatible with the current commercial and leisure activities. Funding for the scheme is primarily from the Environmental Agency funds, with additional Section 106 and SIL contributions. SIL contributions were approved in January 2021. We have undertaken key stakeholder engagement to date, including with council members, Lyme Regis Town Council, local businesses, community groups, Historic England, Environmental Agency, licensing bodies and local fishing industry reps. Further preparatory works are needed following approval of this business case, including further engagement with the public and partner organisations like Historic England. The key dates in the report are the Environmental Agency funding approval, May 2022, further preparatory work between June 22 and August 23, and construction from October 23 to March 24. The most controversial elements are the surfacing at key locations and that the Cobb is also a Grade 1 listed structure. We will undertake further engagement and consultation with all stakeholders and the public before any design is actually finalised. The report you've got in front of you, members, has 4 recommendations, but before I propose those recommendations, I'd like to place on record my thanks to Matthew Penny, who is actually in the audience to answer any questions that I can't, for what is a very good report. He works very hard on our coastal defences, and I thank him for the work he's done to date and warn him there's a lot more to come. So we have 4 recommendations, Leader. So I give those to the Council for the
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. I intend to take all 4 in one hit. Councillor Laura Mirrell, are you happy to second that? Thank you. Are there any questions from non-executive members? Sorry. Councillor Alford, come on in. Microphone, please.
Councillor Alford from Egerton. I do need to give you just a little bit of information before I start my question, because there's quite a bit of history in this paper and referring to a predecessor authority, and it is likely that the decisions made by that predecessor authority I cast votes in, so just relevant information there. But I'm looking at the future rather than the past. And what I want to know is whether the project finance from the EA scheme, does that depend on the work being for coastal protection? And if so, how much of the work that is proposed is for coastal protection?
Thank you very much for that extremely interesting question. Right. Are you, Matthew Penny, are you clear about the microphone? Please switch on and please answer.
There we go.
Yeah, you've got that work.
Sorry about that. The highest cost elements of the scheme are the coastal protection elements. So we've got structural stability works as well as scour protection. So the structure itself has been undermined by scour at the toe, at the base of the walls, which is causing instability. And that itself, because you're working in the marine environment, is the highest cost element. So there are non-coastal protection elements, which as you said, the legacy council, the predecessor councils wish to include within it, and we've brought that forward into the scheme, and sort of servicing improvements as well as the signage, etc., are part of that, as well as the utility upgrades. The flood defence, the Environment Agency funds will not cover those elements, and that's where the contributions from SEAL and S106 come in. In order to cover that, they've been assigned already to this scheme in particular, and coastal defence works along the Lyme Regis frontage, coastal frontage. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alford, has that answered your question, or do you have a supplementary?
I think it partially answers my question, but I don't have a supplementary.
Okay, that's fine. Can I suggest you talk to the officer outside of this meeting to clarify if you require anything further, or talk to Councillor Ray Brown? Thank you very much. Are there any other non-executive members who wish to ask questions? No, I can't see any. In that case, we have a proposer and a seconder. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with... Sorry, Councillor Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, yeah, I would like to speak in support of this, because Councillor Mary Penfold and I, seems like many, many years ago, at the West Dorset District, a chair and vice chair of the committee that did the original works at West Dorset District. It's made a huge difference to the town, and I'm sure that these works will be equally as important. And in fact, the most interesting thing was that we were collecting tourists in the winter to come to Lyme Regis to watch the works happen. And it really sort of extended the season for them. So boys and toys and all that sort of thing, it's great to go and watch a digger. I think this is a really good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very relevant comments. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in this report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. I now move to item 9. My favourite village name in the whole of Dorset Yetminster and Rhyme Intrinsica Neighbourhood Plan. Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do love the opportunity that comes to me for neighbourhood planning. I've been a neighbourhood planning champion for the last 10 years since Mr. Pickles had the wonderful idea with the Localism Act 2011. And it's a great pleasure today to bring to you the Yetminster and Rhyme Intrinsica Neighbourhood Plan 2017 to 2036. Now, it's been subject to independent examination and a referendum, and that referendum was pretty unanimous. In fact, it was 96.4% in favour of the plan, and it says in statute if it's over 50% of the people that turn out, then that neighbourhood plan should be made as soon as possible part of the planning SPD for Dorset Council. So we do use that as one of the documents when looking at planning applications. And it's also a great pleasure, Chairman, that we have the local ward member here, Councillor Mary Penfold, already been mentioned just now by Councillor Haynes, who I would like to address those that have made this neighbourhood plan. I know for a fact, because I was one of the people that was involved in the Gillingham one, which took 6 years to do. And they met every Wednesday, apart from Christmas, for 6 years. I stayed for the first year and a half. I could not commit anymore. The actual amount of commitment from the local members, from the community, is huge in these things. So when I say congratulations, I really do mean it, because it is quite an undertaking. And on that point, Chairman, before I go to the recommendations, I would like, with your indulgence, to invite Councillor Penfold to address this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Just before you do that, I'm assuming you're proposing, and Councillor Ferrara, you are seconding. Thank you very much. Councillor Mary Penfold, you now may speak. Thank you very much.
Chairman, a significant amount of work has been undertaken by the Parish Council and members of the group in forming this plan. The vision for the parish took a great deal of time to complete, working with officers from the council, CPRE, the village committees, the hall committee and residents who have asked and are very grateful for the help and support received from our council officers. Yetminster is a large, sustainable village with a vibrant community. I trust the recommendation will be carried. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Penfold. It is always very good to hear local members contributing to the debate and supporting. We are very grateful. Are there any other non-executive members who wish to speak? No, I see nobody. Any cabinet members wish to make any further comments? No. In that case, does any member of the cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. We now move to item 10, Officer Delegated Authority to agree telecoms operators access agreements. Councillor Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Chairman. This is another, I like good news stories. I've got two good news story papers today. We have, and the government are supporting us to improve the gigabit broadband and mobile digital technologies. It's a real priority for economic growth. It's a central plank of a former industrial strategy for levelling up. It's also part of the council, Dorset Council's economic growth strategy. One of the problems that we have, being a very rural area, is getting that connectivity to the harder to reach places. And this paper is about us looking to provide at very limited £1 cost the access across our land and our property for the organisations that might provide.
Sorry, Councillor Kirby, can you keep your conversation down a bit? We can hear. Thank you.
that normally we would be charging a commercial rate for commercial activity across our land. This appears to be a bit of nonsense if we were providing grant money for the same organisations to come across our land. So what we're looking to do is to do this at a very nominal rate as part of the contract so that we can support gigabit provision as far and as wide as possible across Dorset. And that's what this is about. The paper asks for the delegation of routes and for the discounts to be down to the portfolio holder for property, who will speak in a minute, and that delegation goes in that direction because although digital's in my portfolio, the actual property and land is in his. So it's a bit of a mishmash of a paper. I'll pass over with your permission, Chairman, to Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I'm assuming that you are proposing, and I'm assuming that Councillor Ferrari, you are seconding. And as it now comes over to you, please speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Haynes has covered most of the detail of the paper. Just to say, one of the underlying problems about Dorset's wonderful geography is that it leaves some of our more rural homes and businesses distant from digital access. This is Dorset Council doing its bits to deal with that problem. Wherever we can contribute by taking digital access for communities across our land, this paper helps deliver that. Entirely supportive of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferrari. Are there any non-executive members who wish to speak on this? Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I know it's not a question, but I would like to thank Councillor Jill Haynes for sorting out some of our connections in Wareham. A quadrant of actually the old town of Wareham were very lacking.
Thank you. That's enough. Put your mic back on now.
And what I'd like to say is it's okay having the Wi-Fi and outreach, but what about actually the electricity supply? We have got limited electricity.
Councillor Ezard, the electricity supply. No, I'm going to stop you there. Councillor Ezard, that is not on the agenda. I made it clear I would only take items on the agenda. If you wish to ask about the electricity supply, you can put a question, but that's not related to this. I'm not allowing it. Thank you. Do you have anything else you wish to say? No, thank you. Any other non-executive members wish to comment? Thank you. Do I have any comments from Cabinet members? No. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. I now move to item 11, which is the establishment of a shareholder committee for the Dorset Centre of Excellence. This item was originally intended to be introduced by the leader. I know I'm standing in for the leader, but I have decided it makes much more sense for Councillor Andrew Parry to introduce this item. Andrew Parry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And as rightly said, in the leader's absence, I'm happy to bring this paper to Cabinet. It is a core part of our plans for the Centre of Excellence that we establish a shareholder committee. We have set out in the paper that they will meet quarterly. There can be additional meetings called at the request of the chair of the committee. In respect of how this forms, it's an important integral part of the governance of what we're seeking to do with our arrangements at the Centre of Excellence. And we do have with us, of course, the report's author in Grace Evans, and as well as Jonathan, available to take any of the legality questions, of which you and I are not qualified to answer, if I may respectfully say, Chair. There are 4 recommendations in the paper. That an executive committee of the executive be established, to be known as the Shareholder Committee for the Dorset Centre of Excellence, that 5 members of the executive be appointed to the Shareholder Committee, that the terms of reference for the Shareholder Committee be approved, and that delegated authority be given to the Shareholder Committee within the scope of its terms of reference, including strategic oversight and council consent decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parry. Grace Evans is our monitoring officer, and Legal Eagle, who is in the audience, who will answer any legal or any difficult questions. Can I first of all establish that Councillor Perry, you have proposed it, and Councillor Jill Haynes, you have seconded it. Can I ask if there are any questions from non-executive members? I see no hands up. Fine. Are there any questions from the Cabinet? No. Grace Evans, would you like to make any comment? Is there anything you think we should add or that the public should be aware of? You don't have to say anything, but I'm just giving you the chance. No? That's fine. Okay. In that case, if there's nothing more to add, I shall take that as read. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in this report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. I now move to item 12, self-evaluation of children's services. Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chair. And as always, it's a delight and a pleasure as the Cabinet Member for Children's Services to bring such a report before Cabinet today. To take that moment to pause and look back at the work we have undertaken in the last year, not only in the volume of it, but the breadth of it, against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic and associated lockdowns. But first and foremost, at the front of our minds, our children and young people in such a heartening way is really a privilege for me and others. But I would, of course, like to take this opportunity to thank our Executive Director, Teresa Levy, and our Corporate Director team and Senior Leadership team who are with us today for the amazing amount of work they've done against the backdrop that we've seen over the last 12 months. Yes, we've had our achievements, and some of those are public achievements that we can be rightly proud of. For example, achieving our good rating for Ofsted with outstanding for leadership. And we acknowledge that. And that really is a confirmation of the fabulous work that has gone on in transforming our children's services. Establishing what we feel is a programme that will allow children and young people to thrive across the county. I'd also like to take the chance to thank members of Council who have given their support to our children and young people and the responsibilities we all undertake as corporate parents, and that is right that is reflected. But of course, most of all, I do want to thank our fabulous children and young people. It is a privilege to serve them every single day, and I'm heartened by this report. But I do acknowledge in areas of the report where it does draw attention to things like our care leaver accommodation requirements, that is a piece of work that has been earnestly undertaken. It is a conversation between myself and Graham Carr-Jones, who holds the Cabinet portfolio for that. And I do assure those young people in our care who will be leaving their service that we will do everything we can to ensure that they arrive in as settled adulthood as possible. Very happy to take questions from the Chair, but I also would like others present from Children's Services to comment if they wish, Chair, at your discretion.
Thank you very much. I assume you're proposing, and Councillor Gary Sutton, I believe you agreed to second. Before I go to non-executive members, Teresa Levy, as you were spoken of in such glowing terms, you may like to take a little bit of the praise. On behalf of your team, I add.
Thank you, Chairman, and always on behalf of the team and always on behalf of the community of people who support children's services. It has been, as Councillor Parry has absolutely outlined, an incredibly challenging time for children and families in our communities. And that time doesn't stop now, actually. What we know is that the pandemic for us is probably just about starting. The level of pent-up need, the level of disability and difficulty our families have had means that actually what we're seeing in recent reports published this week talking about the very young children in our community, those under 2, where they've experienced all of their parent and caregiver, it's often wearing masks where they're in early years provision, not being able to understand and see the level of communication that they would normally have seen. So seeing real drop back, not just in terms of education standards, but in terms of children's well-being. What we know for children's services is that we're fairly well placed to respond to that because the incredible locality integration that we've managed to achieve and the way in which people are working together around families and schools and settings is going to make a big difference. But we have got more to do. I think somebody said to us at the beginning of our outstanding judgment for Ofsted, would we sit on our laurels? I don't think we know where our laurels are, frankly, in children's services, let alone to sit on them. What we know is we want to do more, we want to be better, we want our children's lives to be ever better. And so we've got in that kind of next steps part 14 to describe the things that we're looking to do. I would want to make a plea now. What we really need are more and more homes for our children who are in our care, and so this is a call to arms. We will be providing a much greater level of support around our Mockingbird project for those children and families, but we would really encourage people to come forward to put themselves forward as foster carers, and potentially supporting lodgings for those young people. As Councillor Parry has rightly outlined, we want our care leavers to have the very best homes, and that means steady and safe, good enough. And some of that can be with supported lodging carers in the communities. So again, a real kind of appeal from me for people to come forward to do that work. So thank you. Thank you all, everybody who's been involved in that huge campaign really to make children's services as good as they have been found to be by Ofsted. The self-evaluation gets presented to Ofsted. We've been through that with my fabulous corporate director team. They were very pleased with this self-evaluation and feel very confident about the trajectory that Dorset Council are on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for the Executive Director. The report is to be noted, so it does not need to be proposed or seconded. So I'll now go to non-executive members. Councillor Andrew Kirby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for earlier. I thought I'd highlight that I was out of the room for the broadband fibre discussions. I think it's a fantastic bit of work, and I think that one of the things that I'll take this opportunity to highlight is the one area of development we need to work harder on is our care leaver offer. And I think it's pertinent to remind members of their statutory duties as corporate parents to those young people up to the age of 25. And to that end, myself and Louise Drury will be holding a seminar before the next full council, and that will be opened up to all members just to highlight what we can do as elected members to be able to ensure that we are pushy corporate parents. And then also, and I'm looking across to Cabinet here, I will be doing a piece of work to look through every single directorate to see what we can offer our young people. And we're going to take that whole family approach to our care leavers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. So your question is to all members and all Cabinet members that they will contribute to that seminar and to all of the actions that you're taking. And we confirm we will. Thank you.
Just as supplementary, I can confirm that there will be cake at the members' seminar.
I'm going to stop you going any further. Thank you very much. Right. As I said, this report is to be noted. Are there any other contributions from non-executive members? In that case, Cabinet happy that this report be noted? Yeah. Did you want to speak, Councillor Bryant? Yep.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. Children's experience in life at such an early age sets the trend for the way they fit in with the rest of the community as they become adults. I'd like to state on record my congratulations to the team on both this report and the achievements that they are bringing forward in looking after our younger children. It's a very, very difficult time at the moment for children, and my heart goes out to some of the children that are suffering at the moment, and they can be assured of my support all the way through as we try to make life better for the children of the community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no other Cabinet contributions, we'll take that item as noted. Thank you very much. We now move to item 13, and I ask the Cabinet member who is responsible for antisocial behaviour. Sorry, let me reword that. This item is the consultation report for antisocial behaviour related public space protection orders. Councillor Laura Miller.
Thank you very much, Chair. Definitely, thank you. So public space protection orders were introduced by the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act in 2014. They are intended to deal with a particular nuisance or a problem that is detrimental to a local community and their quality of life. They're not intended to punish vulnerable people. They're not intended to be heavy-handed. They're intended to give us and the police a mechanism by which we can make sure that everybody is enjoying their local areas. The West Dorset, Weymouth and Portland PSPOs are due to expire in August. I'm just checking, yep, August. We've reviewed the existing orders. We've gone to statutory consultees. It's gone through, this report's gone through overview and had a really good going over at overview, actually. We've made some changes following that meeting, which you can see highlighted in the report. It covers, amongst other things, camping on our beaches, fires in our open spaces, aggressive begging, which is not, normal kind of vulnerable people asking for support. It's actually where it's causing distress to an individual. It covers feeding of seagulls, which I think we can all agree is the most important thing, not to do that. In fact, as I was driving in this morning, I was driving in behind a bus with an advert saying, "Don't feed the locals," with a picture of seagulls on it. So it covers antisocial behaviour of all sorts. You can see the detail in the report. We've got John Newcombe with us, who's the author of the report. He can answer any particularly detailed questions. But I would say this is not intended, these PSPOs are not intended to stop people enjoying our open spaces. They're intended to protect our open spaces. For example, if you look at the recent, over the last couple of years, fires in our forests, which have had a huge impact. We're working very closely with the Forestry Commission. That's just a good example of the partnership working. Also the wild camping on beaches. Wild camping sounds really kind of exciting and attractive, but of course we know that we've all, well, I've certainly gone out litter picking after some of those wild camping experiences, and they're not good for our local area. So in summary, we've done a lot of work. All the reports are in the pack. You can see, hopefully read the detail. It's gone through overview, and I would recommend this report to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I assume you're proposing it. And Councillor Ray Bryan, you said you would like to second it. Did John Newcombe wish to say anything on the report before I move to non-executive members? Mr. Newcombe?
Nothing to add, Chair, just to say I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Gray, Radipole, Weymouth. Given the weighty subjects that we've been talking about today, this is a point of detail, so I do concede probably should have gone to overview, but I've missed it. It's to do with Appendix F, particularly for my area of Weymouth, and it's to do with cycling on the promenade. Did we as a council, it might affect other appendices as well, but did we consider the growing trend of electric scooters, given that we make the exclusions based on a safety issue? I'm wondering, given the rise in scooters, skateboards, which are a safety issue on most pedestrian ways, did we consider that for the PSBO? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray, and I note your choice of words, given that they are a safety issue. I thought that was very well worded. Councillor Miller, would you like to address that?
I can try, but John might be better placed. It's my understanding that you shouldn't be using an electric scooter anyway on that area, but John, do you want to confirm?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had a whole raft of responses to the consultation, and many local residents picked up on the issues of electric scooters, and it is something we're looking at. We're looking at the cycling provisions on Weymouth Seafront on the promenade, and speaking to our colleagues in highways about how we can tackle that. So that is a work in progress.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gray, you wish to come back?
Apologies.
Yes, we may not be able to do that, but of course, lots of people do it, so it is a live safety issue. I guess, one of the solutions might be that we, as we do with Preston Beach Road, we might consider, whether you agree with cycling on promenades where pedestrians are or not, what we might consider is some sort of demarcation for people who do use electric scooters that shouldn't, and also cycling for the whole year round. So it is something we should look forward, because the trend is going to grow. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, do you want to come back and say you'll consider that?
Yeah, I'm happy to look at that in the future. Everything's got to be evidence-based. I should say, with existing cycling, along the promenade. Again, because these are not intended to sort of disrupt normal enjoyment, it doesn't apply to children under 12, and you can apply for exemptions. For example, I know there's a local charity that takes disabled people with limited mobility out. They would love to be able to cycle along the promenade in the summer, and they are obviously incredibly safety conscious. So there are, you know, there are exceptions. Everything has to be evidence-based, otherwise we can't do it. But I think, as John's outlined, very happy to look at it.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Ray Bryan, did you, with your encyclopedic knowledge of this area, would you like to make a comment?
I'm not sure where you get that from, Chairman, but I'll try and answer a few questions. As people are aware, there are trials going on the electric scooters at the moment. Several areas were chosen to run these trials. Those are still continuing. We don't have the results of them yet. My fear is on electric scooters, A, they're very quiet. Having had the experience of being told to ride one by certain officers who aren't in this room, so I can't actually pick on them for that, but they videoed me on one of these scooters. You've got to remember that these scooters will reach speeds of 11 miles per hour, and that coming up behind pedestrians, I think, is totally unsafe in the environment of Weymouth. I would have great I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Gray, and we do need to see some enforcement on those that are actually breaking the law, if that's what you're looking for. And I think that's an issue we need to take up outside of the room. So I'm glad you brought it up. But I think it's very important to understand that these could become quite dangerous going forward. So I would struggle to find myself in a position currently where I could support any specific area being set aside where these can be used. I'm a great supporter of getting people as mobile as we can and use whatever methods we can, but I just have a big concern over these motorised scooters in what is a very confined area. So I take on board what you've said, and I will discuss it with my colleagues in the police to see whether we can't reach an agreement on, because at the moment they're not legal to ride. So, and that to me is the important issue. As I say, we need to wait for the report and see where we go from there. But I think it's an important question that you raise, and it's raised an issue that I now need to deal with. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. I'm going to stop the discussion there because it seems to me there is quite a lot of detailed discussion. Oh, yeah. I'm going to stop the discussion, except I'm not, because Councillor Kirby, I'm not going to continue this because this needs to go to more detailed discussion elsewhere, but you are welcome to come in with any further questions.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, I would like to come in with a further question. Just tonight, I fully endorse the PSPOs. For me, I'd like to see the enforcement of Grockles using inappropriate barbecues and burning down my county. So for me, that's an absolute winner. As an Englishman, I have a strong sense of injustice, and my concerns are around the lack of enforcement. I note in the report that it's a warranted police officer or a council officer that may do the enforcement. I think my concern is around that there are very few warranted police officers that deal with low-level behaviour, as found in the public space protection orders. The police would usually use PCSOs, thank you. This is going to be an absolute tongue twister. So in Dorset, can PCSOs enforce PSPOs, and has that been factored into how the PSPOs will be enforced?
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Kirby. So can PCSOs enforce PSPOs?
Thank you. That's an abbreviation treat there. I don't think they can. John, do you want to comment on the detail?
Thank you, Chair. We have had conversations with Dorset Police about this subject. We have a small CSAS team that are specific to Weymouth, who are authorised and funded by partners. We have discussed the issue with the police about PCSOs being empowered to issue fixed penalty notices. Unfortunately, that hasn't proved fruitful at this point, but there are ongoing discussions in relation to that. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, can I ask a supplementary on that then? So then my question is around. So I'm assuming then that there are actually very few authorised officers that are able to actually enforce this. So my steer and my feeling is, do we have a programme for training and empowering council officers and other individuals so they can become authorised people?
Thank you. Yes, we would do proper training with council officers if they were going to enforce this, or be in a position where they would enforce it on behalf of their town council or on behalf of Dorset Council. I would also just say that this was raised in overview, and the agreement was that scrutiny would conduct a post-implementation review of the PSPOs. So if there are any issues arising, which you have correctly almost anticipated, then they would be looked at through that review. So I hope that's helpful.
That is very helpful. Okay, thank you very much. The item has been extensively discussed, proposed and seconded. So does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in this report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We now move to item 14, Dorset Education Board, Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chair. The Dorset Education Board, very delighted to bring this paper to Cabinet today. We previously took this paper, along with a raft of others that are before Cabinet today, through our overview committee and received very positive responses from them, as well as you would expect, a correct level of detail and inquisitiveness. What we touched on earlier was how the pandemic affected children and young people. And one of the very, very few positives that we saw out of that whole ghastly situation was the importance of partnership working and how effective it could be when we got it right. And we took the learning from that period of time, and we've really brought that into the Dorset Education Board. And we do that because we have this absolute belief that every child in Dorset should go to a good or outstanding school, and the importance of that. And that is a message that is shared by our schools, colleges, early years settings across the board. And one of the things that I wasn't able to necessarily talk about in much detail at the time, but I am delighted to be able to talk about today, is the importance of us finding a highly respected independent chair for that board. And the recommended appointment of Stephen Twigg, the former Education Minister, to serve as the independent chair, I think is something that Cabinet would welcome. His expertise in the field of education and his commitment to both Dorset and the children of Dorset really did shine through at the interview stages at all levels. And I warmly look forward to working with him going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. I assume you're proposing, and I understand Councillor David Walsh is seconding. Thank you. Vic Verma, did you want to add anything?
Possibly just to add in the time since the overview meeting committee, we have had the publication of the Education White Paper from government. We believe the report is consistent with that and continues to talk about local authorities remaining at the heart of education system, championing all children in their area, especially the most vulnerable. And we believe that the values of the board that we intend to set up are consistent with all of what's in the Education White Paper that's been published last week. But nothing.
Thank you. I'll go to non-executive members before I go to Cabinet. Any other non-executive members wish to speak? Councillor Haynes, I believe you wanted to speak. Is that right?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I was putting my hand up a second.
Councillor Haynes is seconding. Are there any other Cabinet members who wish to speak? May I just add my personal thanks. What you have done is you've identified the best person for the job, irrespective of their background. I'm delighted. It demonstrates our mantra that we look for the best person, not somebody who's necessarily from our own tribe. And I'm absolutely delighted that you've done so, and I wish you well for that. We've had this proposal seconded. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in this report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. We now move to item 15, Children's Commissioning Strategy. Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you again, Chair. The paper before Cabinet sets out our 5-year approach to commissioning strategy for the children's services. I'm delighted that the report's author, Claire Shields, Corporate Director, is available to answer questions from Cabinet and other members in the Chamber today. The reason for the recommendation, the effective strategy commissioning, is the main way to understand, plan and deliver better outcomes for residents. This strategy sets the direction for commissioning activity that will support our strategic aims to improve well-being of children in Dorset over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. You are proposing. I will second that. Claire Shields, did you want to add anything?
Thanks. It's really helpful to be able to bring forward the commissioning strategy to set out our strategic aims for the next 5 years. This strategy is the way that we use the total resource for our children's services strategically and effectively, so includes all the resource, including our workforce. So it's a plan really for the next 5 years that makes best use of our resources, ensures that we have sufficient services for all of our children, young people and families, as well as continue our investment in early help, which we know has been given good outcomes and is an important part. So really, just to say, good sense of direction and good join up really with our adult services colleagues through whole life commissioning, and sets the marker for how we work with our health colleagues in the integrated health and care system.
Thank you very much. As always, it is lovely to hear from you. Are there any non-executive members who wish to comment? Sorry, Councillor Alford. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you. Microphone. I just wish to understand a bit more about the scope and scale of this strategy, and whether it applies to all provider services. I do see a list of activities on page 319 to 320, but I don't have any reason to believe that that's a full list. So I'm just really trying to understand better the services that are covered by this strategy. And at the same time, to understand the scale, which is how much in monetary terms are we talking about here? And it would be very, 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 very helpful if you could give me just one number, which is the figure in the budget for the next financial year, covering all these activities covered by the strategy. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parry, do you want to start and hand over to Claire Shields?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly one of the challenges I often pose to officers is I don't like seeing lines in accounts that read either other or miscellaneous. I actually like to know, particularly when they all add up to quite a sizable amount of money. And I think we have to understand where we see smaller amounts of spend and investment in children and young people that may be targeted at a particular intervention, and understanding how we get a positive outcome from that, which critically could result in much bigger cost avoidance, which is another conversation we would want to have in how we use our resources. In respect of the mechanics of that, I will now hand over to Claire Shields, if I may, on the operational side of matters.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Alford. We had this discussion at People and Overview Committee as well. Just to confirm, the Children's Services total budget, revenue budget, is 74 million. And this strategy reaches across all of that spend. It includes 32 million per year of externally commissioned services, and the rest is spent on our workforce. What the strategy also includes is how we will spend some of our capital funds. So the SEND capital strategy is 37.5 million as well. So it is a big scope of our service delivery over the next 5 years. The first year talks about externally commissioned services, and those are things that we have in pipeline for procurement, and that's what's listed in there. Over the period of 5 years, it will grow and expand as we look to across the delivery of our medium-term financial plan, so it will be across a range of other services as well. So happy to bring back further procurement plans as they come alongside as well, if that helps answer the question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alford, you wish to come back?
Yes, I just would ask whether there would be a general agreement that, given the scale that you've just mentioned there in terms of those numbers, there is some significance in monitoring the performance of this commissioning strategy. And it would be interesting to hear at some stage what the proposals about that are.
Thank you. Can I, Councillor Parry? Right, I'm going to come to Councillor Parry and Councillor Haynes. I see two roles for monitoring. One is the overview committee and one is performance management. Councillor Parry, would you like to talk about the former, and Councillor Haynes, would you like to talk about the latter?
Thank you. I think there are a number of ways that we can provide that sort of scrutiny. One is obviously as an executive, we have that capacity to do that, and such as in forums as today, those matters can be highlighted if required. But also, yes, it's, as I'm sure Councillor Haynes is going to say, the very regular and really tough scrutiny that we do receive from the Performance Management Board and a number of areas of spend of children's services, is a rigorous process, and as indeed are other formalised committees of council. What I would say to any councillor, though, is if you have a particular area of interest that you'd like to understand the spending of children's services, I'd be very happy to meet with you with appropriate officers and go through it in some detail.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to say, and perhaps allay Councillor Alford's concerns on this matter, we have a performance management meeting on a monthly basis where we look at spend versus budget, and any red areas we regularly do a deep dive into to see if anything is going wrong and what we can do to support it. We make sure that we have a suitable resource, because sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to look to see what we are providing, or to see, for example, if the numbers of children coming into care have suddenly jumped up. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen with unaccompanied children coming from the Ukraine at the moment. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on. So I can assure you that that is something that does happen on a regular basis. And if there's sufficient cause for concern, then we will take that through as either a cabinet paper or through to an overview or scrutiny to do a further deep dive on it.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Yes, I was going to add that scrutiny has access to those figures, and those figures are largely available to members on the council anyway. But your point is a good one, and I thank you for that. Do you have any further supplementaries? Thank you very much. So we've had this proposed and second. Any other comments from Cabinet members? No. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in this report? No. In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you. We move to item 16, Safeguarding Families Together, the new model. Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of introducing the Safeguarding Families Together new model, I particularly draw your attention to the fact that we are looking at a pilot programme in the Chesil locality, that's Weymouth and Portland area, and I hope any local members present would want to show their support for what is being proposed. I'm delighted that Lisa Reid, who has been the author of the report, is with us. I know she may want to take the opportunity to explain how operationally that would be embedded in and how we will go about monitoring the feedback we receive on that. Because, as I say, we are looking at a pilot project at this stage. If it is proved to be effective, then we can roll that model out in other localities. If it requires some tweaks to the system, then those can be implemented as well. But if I may just pass to Lisa Reid for further comment, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Before you do, I'm assuming you're proposing, and Councillor David Walsh, you are seconding. Thank you very much. Lisa Reid, we'd be delighted to hear if you have anything to add to that.
Thank you. Yes, this is really an exciting opportunity for us to now build on our existing and strong locality arrangements, to be able to bring in our specialist adult practitioners in with us, working alongside our frontline staff who are dealing with children in need of support, in need of child protection and children in care, to be able to address some of those more complexity of cases where there is domestic abuse, substance misuse and parental mental ill health. This gives us a real opportunity to be able to work with those families in a holistic way, working with both the families and the children together to really drive a strategic approach to improving the outcome for our children and families.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from non-executives? Councillor Beryl-Ezard.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beryl-Ezard from Wareham Ward. Yes, I was at the overview committee the last week, and I was very taken with this, and it's very good. What I would like, and a question, is could local members be involved a bit more in what's going on in their areas? So these family hubs, which I believe is what's going to be set up, are known to these local members, because it's very tricky for local members to answer questions in localities if you've got problem families, and then, you know, this is being almost superimposed over your head when you're not in on the action. And unless you go to the overview committees, it's very tricky to pick up on this. And I do actually like to see a lot more members to come along to cabinets and overview committees, even if they're not on them, to actually pick up on a lot of the detail. And there is a lot of detail here, and I really do think this is a very good thing to have holistic whole families that are looked after, and that trends where people are vulnerable and children are at risk is not carried on into further children that they have. And I think this is a very good move, and I would like to see that more local members are involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ezard. Excellent question, with which I completely agree. Councillor Andrew Parry, can you tell us how you're going to make that happen, please?
Oh, I thought I had, sorry.
Could I defer to Executive Director Teresa Levy to respond and how members could assist?
Thank you, Councillor Ezard. Really, really helpful question, and it prompts and allows me to kind of remind Cabinet that this has been an incredibly challenging time for our families, and one of the things that's really important for us is to see that our families are us. They are the same troubled people are the same as us, and particularly in this time, mental health challenges in adults, overuse of drugs and alcohol, domestic abuse has risen in case after case, town after town, village after village. The complexity then for our staff to work effectively with keeping the child and child protection at the focus at the same time as working with those really complex adult needs really does require this sort of approach, where we have people, practitioners who are really experienced in working with that complex adult need. What we're looking to do here is to turn around more lives, to support more children staying even where there is a higher risk. Not because that's in any way a financial imperative, although it is something we look at very closely, but because we know ultimately children are still best brought up within their families where we can support those grown-ups to be the very best people they can be. So working in this way is absolutely essential. And, you know, there is a fantastic proverb, isn't there, about it takes a village to raise a child, and we completely understand the concept that elected members are key, wise men and women of those villages, and we want to engage you within that. And the way in which we've structured that in our present model is around the local alliance groups. Every local alliance group is well attended by elected members, but more and more are welcome. Every local alliance group is driving the policy for each one of our locality areas. And it's within those local alliance groups that feed up to our Strategic Alliance for Children and Young People plan, where any of this policy begins to have its germination. So it really is from a bottom-up place that our Children and Young People's Plan exists, and this is part of it. It takes us on to the next stage. It supports a higher level of risk management in the community. But it is a challenge, but that's the best place. Obviously, it's really important to all of us in this chamber and to all of our communities that personal confidentiality is protected, and we'll remain strong advocates of that. So, but the way in which we can share with you, the way in which you can plan with us, and the way in which we'd really welcome the drive of that policy is in those local alliance groups.
Thank you, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Councillor Kirby.
Sorry, Chair, I'm going to be cheeky. There's no question. It's just a ringing endorsement. I fully support the more of a whole family approach to safeguarding. This for me was identified quite early on through some of the numerous domestic homicide reviews that Dorset County Council and Dorset Council has led on. So I'm delighted to see this new model being tested. We know that there's a strong link between domestic abuse, substance abuse, and that leads to child abuse. So I'm pleased to see that Children's is leading the way and taking the lead in early intervention.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. So your question is, will the Cabinet join me in supporting this? And we will. Thank you. Thank you. And it was related to the agenda. That's fine. Any Cabinet members have anything further to say on this? No? Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We now move to Cabinet Member update on policy development matter referred to an overview committee for consideration. I don't believe there are any, but if any Cabinet member has something, no, there aren't. Are there any portfolio holder reports? No. Councillor Ray Brown, do you have anything further? Sorry, Councillor Ferrari. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it appropriate to say a few words about Southport House. When on the shadow executive, we invited the Chief Executive of Cornwall, the last unitary to form before us, and said to him, what was it that you would have learned from your experience? And the thing that he said was the most important thing that they should have done better was to sort out their property portfolio. They spent a decade with 2 central offices with half the council in one place, half the council in another. Terrible working environment for efficiently integrating a council together. And that's what we've done with Southport House. Southport House is the single biggest piece of that jigsaw that Dorset had to resolve. And it's really hard to imagine a better outcome than the one that we achieved. I mean, we looked at lots of other possibilities for it, and this outcome is just by a huge margin the best. From a health perspective, we, the NHS, but with our assistance, bring into the centre of town healthcare to deliver a better health outcome for the citizens of Dorchester and Dorset. We will also bring permanent jobs into the centre of town, both to service the needs of the staff and of the patients of the facility. From a Dorset perspective, we will save £7 million over the life of this contract, plus the costs that we won't have to incur in terms of insurance and maintenance on the building. That money will get redeployed into Andrew's efforts this morning. Lots of areas of children's services and elsewhere within the council will be redeploying that money. I think this is a fabulous outcome for Dorset and Dorchester, and I'm very pleased that that's a solution we managed to bring forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. You did tell me you were going to say that, so I apologise for not bringing you in, but you did come in, and can I thank you and the officers for what I think is a really great achievement. Thank you. The next item, Councillor Ray Bryan, do you have anything to report on climate change? Just hang about for a minute, please, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm having problems with buttons today, obviously. There's 3 points I'd like to update both the Cabinet members who are here present and obviously the wider public. Is first of all, as everybody is aware, we were given 19 million of government funding to decarbonise our own public buildings. I'm pleased to say that is progressing exceptionally well. Thanks to the team for doing that. Just so everybody's aware, we were given a 3-month extension by Salex to continue with the work, which I think is absolutely important because we have experienced some supply issues. Needless to say, when the money was handed out, everybody was looking for the same sort of products. But that's been overcome, and again, thanks to our purchasing team, who've done an absolutely cracking job on that. So yes, the 3 months extension has been awarded. For those that have forgotten, Stephen Ford is joining us on the 1st of next month from Cornwall Council to be the corporate director responsible for the climate change emergency, but also the decarbonisation continuing on both our properties and also getting the general public on board. That's an important part of the programme going forward. Last but not least, I'm going to take this opportunity to inform people that because of the way we've handled the 19 million and how successful we've been in achieving the spend on that, I've been invited to speak at the Public Sector Estates Conference later this month on how we achieved what we have and to give some guidance as to how other councils can help in decarbonising their own properties. So I'm in the process of preparing, I've got 20 minutes at the conference, which is quite a long time, but it'll give me the opportunity to just show how good we have been. And again, I'd just like to point out, this is very much down to the officers who have delivered on top of their business as usual. And we mustn't forget they've got jobs to do normally, and we're just piling the work on them. But they've taken up the challenge, and 10 out of 10 to them for doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan, and I trust that your speech or missive, you will ensure that it is distributed around members after the event, please. There are no urgent items to report. Before we move to exempt business, I just want to say a thank you to members, which is why I wanted you to stay, Councillor Kirby. I think members being at cabinet meetings and asking questions adds a huge amount of value. I think you raise issues that we may not have raised, and you allow us to test what we're doing with you. So I thank you. I thank you for coming, and some of you come rather more than regularly than others, so please do. Please encourage your colleagues. It doesn't matter which party you're from. I think you add huge value, and I'm genuinely very grateful because I think it's a much better result. Excuse me, my voice is going, hopefully not quite yet. So I'm now going to move to exempt business. May I have a proposer to move to exempt business, Councillor Parry? May I have a seconder, Councillor Haynes? We will need to turn off the webcasting. We will need to clear the building, and that's the lovely young lady at the back, I'm afraid to say. So I'll wait for a minute to clear that before we move on to the final item, which is exempt business.